17-year-old Raleigh Freeman III died May 16 of an accidental gunshot wound to the head.
We like to think we're smart, that we make rational decisions, but the truth is, every single day, people do something stupid. Most of the time, we get lucky. We walk away unharmed, maybe a little embarrassed, but sometimes, just one terrible decision is all it takes.
His name is Rodney Clark, and he's a bear of a man himself at 280 pounds. He's getting suited up to scare away the black bear frolicking in his backyard in Asheville, North Carolina. After waving his arms frantically, Rodney busts a move, freaking out the real bear, who hauls off back to the woods.
A moment of poor judgment, a split second where common sense takes a back seat, and the consequences? Fatal. These aren't accidents in the traditional sense. They're tragedies born from choices that should never have been made. So what drives someone to take a risk so obviously dangerous that it costs them everything? Death for a view, the Majorca cliff jump. Murat Lamrob was 31 years old when he died on the coast of Majorca in 2022. He wasn't drunk, he wasn't being pressured by anyone, he simply wanted to create content. Standing on a cliff about 30 meters high with his family watching nearby, he prepared to jump into the ocean below. People do it all the time, right? Cliff diving is thrilling, photogenic, perfect for social media.
What's the last part of the dive here? This, once again, is called the Barani, so she's done that thousands and thousands of times.
But Murat miscalculated. He didn't account for the angle, the rocks, or the unpredictable nature of the sea beneath him. When he jumped, he didn't clear the rocks. He hit them hard on the way down, and by the time he reached the water, he was already unconscious. His body sank into the Mediterranean. Rescue teams pulled him out later, but it was far too late. All for a video that was never posted. When pilots play games, the Pinnacle Airlines disaster. On October 14, 2004, two commercial pilots were tasked with flying an empty Bombardier CRJ-200 from Little Rock to Minneapolis.
Led up to the crash of Pinnacle Flight 3701 actually started earlier during the day of the 14th of October 2000.
No passengers, no supervision, just them and a brand new jet. So they decided to have some fun. They wanted to see how high they could take it. This wasn't part of the flight plan. It was pure curiosity mixed with arrogance. They climbed to 41,000 feet, well beyond the plane's safe operational ceiling. At that altitude, the engines began to choke. The air was too thin. Both engines flamed out. Suddenly, they were gliding a 50,000-pound aircraft with no power. They tried to restart the engines mid-descent, but waited too long. By the time they got one engine back online, they had lost too much altitude and couldn't reach an airport. The plane crashed into a residential area in Jefferson City, Missouri. Both pilots died. Miraculously, no one on the ground was killed, but the crash destroyed homes and could have been catastrophic. All because two professionals treated a passenger jet like a toy. Loaded gun, loaded mistake, the TikTok tragedy. Rilo Huncho was 17 years old, a rapper trying to build a following on TikTok. In May 2024, he decided to film a video that he thought would look cool.
Farewell to a Suffolk teenager who was killed while making a rap music video for social media.
He pulled out a handgun, pointed it at his own head, and started recording. Maybe he thought the gun wasn't loaded. Maybe he thought the safety was on. Maybe he just didn't think at all. While filming, he pulled the trigger. The gun went off. He died instantly. The video tragically kept recording. It circulated online before being taken down. His family was devastated. Friends were in shock. And for what? A few seconds of content that no one even wanted to see. The gun was real. The bullet was real. And now, so was his death. Lost in translation, the bungee jump that never should have happened. Vera Moll was a 17-year-old Dutch girl on vacation in Spain in 2015. She and her family visited a popular bungee jumping spot. Vera was excited but nervous. She stood on the platform, waiting for the instructor's signal. The problem? She didn't speak much Spanish. The instructor told her no jump, meaning wait. The cord wasn't secured yet. But Vera heard, now jump. She leaped off the platform without hesitation. There was no cord attached. She fell over 40 meters onto rocks below. She suffered catastrophic injuries and died shortly after. It was a miscommunication that took seconds, but ended a life. The instructor was devastated, her family was destroyed, and it all came down to two words that sounded almost identical. Swallowed by beans, death in a silo. Robert Wayne Smith was 94 years old and had worked on farms his entire life. In 2024, he was checking on a silo filled with soybeans on his property in Wisconsin.
As weird as it sounds, the next probably 10 minutes or so, I just okayed it with myself that I was going to die. I mean, people don't come out of grain.
These silos can hold hundreds of thousands of pounds of grain, and they're more dangerous than most people realize. For reasons still unclear, Robert either slipped or intentionally entered the silo while it was full. Soybeans, when piled high, behave almost like quicksand. The more you move, the deeper you sink. Robert was pulled down into the mass. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't escape. By the time emergency responders arrived, it took hours to carefully remove enough beans to reach him. He had suffocated under the weight of millions of tiny seeds. Grain entrapment is a known hazard in agriculture, but that knowledge didn't save him. He was buried alive in his own silo. The falling pillars, a hammock's fatal flaw. Scout and Chasey Scaravilli were sisters, just 12 and 14 years old, enjoying a summer day in 2020. They wanted to relax outside, so they set up a hammock, but instead of tying it to trees, they attached it to two large decorative stone pillars in their backyard. The pillars looked sturdy. They had been standing for years.
Hammocks are a nice way to relax while so many of us are stuck at home. But be warned, they can be very dangerous.
But they weren't designed to hold lateral tension. As the girls settled into the hammock, the weight and angle created just enough force. Both pillars tipped over. They were made of heavy stone, and they fell directly onto the girls. The impact was immediate and fatal. Both sisters died at the scene. It was a freak accident, but also entirely preventable. A hammock tied to the wrong supports became a death trap. The second train, 3 friends and 1 fatal distraction. Kelsey, Savannah, and Essa were 3 friends out for a walk in 2011 along train tracks in Virginia. They wanted to take a photo together. Trains passed through the area regularly, but they thought they were being careful. When they saw a train approaching from one direction, they stepped aside to let it pass. They stood on the adjacent track, smiling, posing for a picture. What they didn't realize was that another train was coming from the opposite direction on the track they were standing on. The noise from the first train masked the sound of the second. By the time they noticed, it was too late. All 3 were struck and killed instantly. The photo was never taken. Their families were left with nothing but grief and unanswered questions about why they didn't just step off the tracks entirely. The unbreakable window, a lawyer's last demonstration. Gary Hoy was a successful lawyer in Toronto. In 1993, he was giving a tour to a group of articling students at his law firm, located on the 24th floor of the Toronto Dominion Center. He wanted to impress them.
Gary Hoy, a Toronto lawyer, fell to his death when he threw himself against the window.
So he walked up to one of the floor-to-ceiling windows and said, "Watch this." He threw his body against the glass to demonstrate how strong it was. He had done this before, multiple times, without issue. The glass held. But this time, something was different. The window frame gave way. The entire pane of glass, still intact, popped out of its frame. Gary fell through the opening and plummeted 24 stories to his death. The students watched in horror. The glass didn't break, but the frame wasn't designed to take that kind of repeated impact. His final demonstration became his last act. Jenga with landmines, when drinking games turned deadly. In 1999, 3 men in a rural part of Cambodia were drinking at a small bar. They had been there for hours, and boredom mixed with alcohol is a dangerous combination. One of them noticed an old landmine sitting in the corner. Cambodia, even years after the war, was still littered with unexploded ordnance. Instead of treating it with the respect it deserved, they turned it into a game. They placed the mine on the floor and took turns stomping on it. Each step was a gamble. Each laugh was closer to disaster. Eventually, someone stomped too hard or in just the wrong spot. The mine detonated. The explosion tore through the bar, killing all 3 men and injuring several others nearby. Landmines are not toys. But in that moment, fueled by alcohol and stupidity, they forgot that. The backflip that ended everything. Parkour at 16 stories. Pavel Kashin was a well-known parkour athlete in Russia. At just 24 years old, he was skilled, confident, and always pushing the limits. In 2013, he climbed to the roof of a 16-story building in St. Petersburg. He wanted to perform a backflip on the edge. It was the kind of stunt that would look incredible on video. He had done dangerous moves before and walked away unscathed, but this time the margin for error was non-existent. He launched into the flip, rotated in the air, and landed back on the ledge. For a split second, it looked like he'd made it, but he couldn't hold his balance. His body tipped backward, and he fell. 16 stories down. He died on impact. The whole thing was captured on camera, a haunting reminder that no amount of skill can eliminate risk when you're performing on the edge of a building. Proving immunity to venom, the snakebite gamble. There are people who believe they're somehow special, that the rules of biology don't apply to them. In the early 2000s, a man in Eastern Europe, reportedly in Romania, told his friends he was immune to snake venom. He claimed to have been bitten before and survived without treatment. To prove it, he brought out a venomous snake, possibly a viper, and let it bite him while his friends filmed. At first, he seemed fine. He laughed it off. But venom works slowly. Within an hour, he began to feel ill. His friends urged him to go to a hospital, but he refused, insisting he didn't need help. By the time he finally agreed, it was too late. The venom had spread too far. He died shortly after arriving at the hospital. His immunity, it turned out, was nothing more than overconfidence. Rocket-powered car, the Giotto catastrophe. This story has been debated for years, but it's rooted in a real concept that someone actually tried.
There goes the rockets!
In the mid-1990s, a man reportedly strapped a Giotto unit, a jet-assisted takeoff rocket used by the military to help planes launch, onto the roof of his car. The idea was simple. He wanted to see how fast he could go. The execution was anything but. When he ignited the rocket on a remote stretch of Arizona desert highway, the car launched forward with thousands of pounds of thrust. It reached speeds far beyond what the vehicle was designed for. The car became airborne, shot off the road, and slammed into the side of a cliff. The impact was catastrophic. Investigators found the wreckage embedded in the rock face, several feet off the ground. The driver was killed instantly. It was one of the most extreme examples of vehicular stupidity ever recorded. Finding a man accused of murder. The prosecution claimed the victim had been shot during a bar fight. Vallandigham disagreed. He believed the victim had accidentally shot himself while drawing his own gun. To prove it, he decided to demonstrate in front of the jury. He grabbed what he thought was an unloaded pistol and mimicked the motion of pulling a gun from a pocket. He wanted to show how easily someone could shoot themselves by mistake. But the gun he grabbed was loaded. When he pulled the trigger, the gun fired. The bullet hit him in the abdomen. He collapsed in front of the jury. He died the next day from his injuries. Ironically, his demonstration worked. The jury acquitted his client, convinced by the accidental shooting they had just witnessed. But Vallandigham paid for that victory with his life. The man in the bear costume, highway horror. In 2012, a man in Montana thought it would be funny to dress up in a realistic bear costume and stand on the side of a highway at night. His goal was to scare drivers. Maybe he thought it would go viral. Maybe he just wanted a laugh. But he didn't think about how drivers would react at highway speeds in the dark. Multiple cars swerved to avoid what they thought was a wild animal. 2 vehicles hit him directly. He was killed on impact. Drivers didn't even realize they'd hit a person until police arrived. The costume was so convincing that, in the darkness, it was indistinguishable from an actual bear. It was a prank that turned fatal, not just for him, but nearly for the drivers who were traumatized by the incident. The exploding condom machine, greed and shrapnel. In 2014, a man in Germany decided he wanted easy money. His target? A condom vending machine on a street corner. These machines often hold small amounts of cash, and he thought blowing it open would be quick and profitable. He used a small explosive charge, lit the fuse, and then made a critical mistake. He didn't take cover. The explosion was more powerful than he expected. The metal casing of the machine ruptured, sending sharp fragments flying in every direction. One piece of shrapnel struck him in the head. He collapsed immediately and died at the scene. Police arrived to find him lying next to the destroyed machine, a few crumpled bills scattered around. All that risk, all that planning, for what amounted to pocket change. Shot by a cactus, the saguaro's revenge. David Grundman went out into the Arizona desert in 1982 with a shotgun and a bad idea. He decided to shoot at a giant saguaro cactus, one of those tall, iconic cacti that can live for over 150 years. He fired several rounds into the trunk. The cactus didn't fall right away, so he kept shooting. Eventually, one of the massive arms of the cactus, weighing hundreds of pounds, broke loose. It fell directly onto him, crushing him beneath its weight. He died instantly. It's one of the strangest and most ironic deaths in Arizona history. The cactus, in a way, defended itself. And Grundman became a cautionary tale about messing with nature. The grenade photo, one click too many. Alexander Chechik was a young man in Russia in 2014. He and his friends found an old hand grenade, likely left over from past conflicts. Instead of reporting it or leaving it alone, Alexander decided it would make a great photo. He pulled the pin, held the grenade up, and smiled for the camera. His friends were nearby, watching. He believed that as long as he held the lever down, the grenade wouldn't detonate. That's technically true, but grenades are unpredictable, especially old ones. Either his grip slipped or the mechanism malfunctioned. The grenade exploded in his hand. He was killed instantly. His friends were injured by the blast. The photo was never taken. What remains is the memory of a completely avoidable death, all for the sake of looking tough. The horse and the engineer, when shame delays help. Kenneth Pinion was a 45-year-old engineer living in Washington State. In 2005, he died from internal injuries sustained during a sexual encounter with a horse. He and a small group of people met regularly on a farm where these acts took place. On this particular night, the injuries were severe. A ruptured colon, internal bleeding. He needed immediate medical attention. But his companions didn't call for help right away. They were afraid. Afraid of being arrested, of being exposed, of the shame that would follow. By the time they finally dropped him off at a hospital, hours had passed. He died shortly after arrival. The case sparked national attention and led to changes in Washington law. But for Pinion, the delay meant the difference between life and death. Some decisions take years to regret, others just seconds. What separates us from these stories isn't intelligence or education, it's often just luck. A moment where we hesitated instead of acting. A choice we didn't make. These weren't bad people, they were just people who made one terrible call. And that was enough.